Hey Tootsie Gang, welcome back, and if you're new, welcome. So today we are going to be continuing with Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. We started reading this in the last video. And for anyone that's new here, I am starting a new series where I just read books and try to keep a nice, steady, even, calm voice and hopefully, help you fall asleep or help reduce your anxiety, stress, and so this is a young adult fiction. Look at that artwork. It's gorgeous. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. And we are on chapter 4. I swim away from the dark fins in seething water. The rain is no longer pummeling the surface, but the boy in my arms is cold now, his warmth stolen by the sea. We ride the tall heights of the waves, and I do my best to keep his head above the swells. If I don't get him somewhere safe, he will die. I think of the only land nearby, Yamoja's Island. Just as the blade of the fin cuts through the water, another does the same, and I force myself to take a moment to think. Holding the boy as high as I can, with one arm, I dip my face under the sea and peer down into the depths. I make out the blue-gray backs of 2 sharks as they circle below. No, I tell them, leave, not this one. I watch as one of the creatures heeds my warning and sinks farther, but the other, the largest, remains. Pulling the boy's arms up over my shoulders, I swim faster, dragging him, barely breathing now through the water. I can make it, I think, as I see the rocks of Yamoja's Cove. The water churns and the boy cries out, but I dare not stop to look. I push all my will into the next command. Go, now. I don't wait to see if my order has worked. I fix my gaze on the slice of sand just beyond the rocks, knifing through the calm waters of the cove. It is only as I drag him closer to the shore that I really think about what I have done. I take in a ragged breath and blink. I've taken the boy from the sea, saved him. My stomach twists as I think back to what Yamoja told me just days ago. All that you need to do, all that you must do, is gather any souls of those who pass in the sea, and we will say a prayer to ease them on their inevitable journey back to Olodumare. This is your purpose, nothing more, nothing less. I was supposed to glean the boy's soul, not his body. This was impressed upon me, and I agreed. But he was alive. Should I have waited until he passed, swum in the trails of his blood while his lungs filled with water? I shake my head. A thought, no, a memory, surfacing in my mind. Pain as angry as red fire and bands of iron around my ribs. A tightness of my chest made worse when the water presses down on me and I sink, hands clawing at the dark shades of blue, even though I am glad to be in the sea, away from Oyambo. A snatched look above, the ship, its hull black and large, skimming along the surface, leaving me behind. The feelings of peace at this as my vision flickers even while my chest spasms. My eyes widen and my legs kick against the blackness of the depths. A remembered burst of death that winds its way around and through me. With the boy's limp body cradled in my arms, I think of his brown eyes, the shade vivid, even that deep in the sea, and I know that I couldn't watch him die. Surely Yamoja wouldn't expect that of me, of any mami wata. I swim towards the land, eager to get him to the shore in safety, but as I pull him through the shallows, his long body scraping the banks of the sand, skimming just beneath the clear water, I wonder what to do with him now. The boy has lost consciousness during the journey, limbs and mouth slack, lashes black spikes against his skin. A dark blue wrapper is tied at his waist, covering his thighs. I drape him over the white sand as water laps at his feet and lean down to examine his face. With full lips and sharp cheekbones, his features resemble a regal terracotta sculpture. I reach for him and then stop myself from brushing the sand from his short coils when I realize his chest is still. Quickly, I heave him onto his side so salty water dribbles from his mouth. My relief at the gasp he takes disappears when I look down at his back. Strips of skin peel away to reveal the fatty white of muscle. I freeze. Bile burns my throat as I swallow it back down, unable to turn away. I can see now why the sharks were so keen. It is far worse than the wound above his eye, which still oozes blood. Anger pulses as I contemplate the wreck of his back, seeing the wounds for the lash marks that they are, knowing what was inflicted upon him. My fingers hover over the damaged skin as the boy coughs. I want to tell him to be careful of his wounds, but before I can, he turns and fixes his gaze on me. His brown eyes remind me again of my mother, of metallic stars on an indigo wrapper, and I slither from the last of the shallows without thinking. The sun pouring onto my tail as the golden pink scales turn to brown skin and a wrapper smooth against the sand. I watch the boy stare as legs, knees, and feet form. It's too late to push myself back into the sea. His eyes widen as he takes in the length of my body. The wrapper that has formed and is tucked tightly around me. Yamoja warned against revealing ourselves to humankind, but is this not different? He hasn't hunted or discovered me. I don't think he could harm me even if he wanted to. Besides, I think as the boy continues to stare, he's already seen me as mami wata. I haven't been this close to someone since I was remade, and I can't stop myself from moving near, taking the small knots in his hair, the dry gray skin around his elbows. He is weak. I can tell from the way he holds himself, one shoulder crooked. The boy watches me as I look down at his feet, so much larger than mine, and then back up to his face. The cut above his eye is open and raw. I reach out with a hand, not even sure why. He pulls back, raising his fists, knuckles already scraped and swollen, the links of the iron manacles clanking as he straightens. Flinching, I step backward, my own fingers curling. We're both breathing hard, eyeing each other warily. I think of the pain he's feeling, what was done to him on this ship and before. Blinking back tears, I want to tell him that I understand, that I wouldn't hurt him, but I don't. I move away to give him space, and the boy lowers his hands, shoulders slumping from the effort. What are you? His words are ragged, slipping out from between crusted lips, white from the salt of the sea. He speaks Yoruba, I think. Mami wata. Emoja incarnate mermaid, I want to say, but instead I answer, my name is Simi. Please, rest. He crawls into the shade of a large banana tree, as far from me as he can, before he loses consciousness once again. Walking back to the strip of the beach, I'm still shaky, the joints of my legs and ankles popping as they adjust to the slide of the ground. I stagger, almost falling, unused to taking more than a few steps. The sand, white hot with heat of the day, burns my toes, slipping between them to scald the rest of my feet. I watch the shallow waves and dip between the sea's folds, letting my tail form, relishing the weightlessness that the water affords me. I look back at the shore, at the dark slump of the boy's body. I'm not sure how long he will sleep or if he will even wake up. Emoja will only appear when summoned, but still, an uneasiness threads through me. I've never found someone alive before. Perhaps I should have left him in the sea, and then I think about his torn body, and my resolve hardens a little more. There's been too much dying, more souls. In the last few weeks, his life is a gift. I tell myself, but what should I do next? I don't know. The sea carries me, the current strong, pulling at my body. I let it. I could swim now and keep swimming until the island is a speck on the horizon. He's alive. I could leave him there to have no more to do with it. As I dive down in the clear water of the cove, I let myself remember the brown eyes of the boy's eyes, the beauty mark just above his eyebrow. He will die if left on his own, and then my saving him will have been for nothing. But what else can I do? I graze a coral reef, my sudden flare of anger and frustration matching its redness. I think of the boy's flayed back, his eyes wide and ruined skin. I could take him to the mainland, but it's too far. He wouldn't survive the tides and the cold for long. If I hide him on the island until he's strong enough to travel, I'd have to make sure none of the other mami wata would see him if they summoned Umoja tomorrow. I sigh into the water. Despite my growing misgivings, I know that I can't abandon him. Somersaulting in the sea, I turn back to the island. The decision made. I'll help him heal and then take him to the mainland. He will need food and water, and I'll be careful to make sure he's not seen. I call to the fish that swim foolishly near me, darting out to grab a few from a school of sardinella. Dragging myself from the shallows, I clean and gut them with a sharpened rock before setting their carcasses near the boy so that he will have food when he wakes. The rock, I keep its serrated edge giving me comfort. I watch the boy as he sleeps, weaving a basket from leaves, leaving him only to collect some water from a small pool just inside the tree line. His skin is a reddish dark brown that almost glows. With broad shoulders and long legs, the boy looks to be roughly my age, no more than 17 or 18 years. I examine his large hands, and when my gaze reaches his wrists, I swallow hard. The black chains are thick links that encircle weeping skin. He must be in pain. I can't get the manacles off, but I can help with the welts. Leaving the bowl of fresh water and the fish wrapped in the banana leaf, I head just beyond the tree line. The wild lettuce is where I remember it, longish green leaves and some purple flowers. I pick all I can carry and head back to the beach. The boy's chest is still rising and falling as he sleeps. Legs drawn up and curled protectively, he still looks big. Carefully, I crush the leaves and creep forward, gently folding the lettuce under the iron bands. There's just enough room. And as I tuck the last shred under the manacle, the boy jerks awake, moving faster than he should be able to. Before I can move away, he grabs my wrist with his other hand, grinding the bone together in a tight grip. I cry out and try to yank myself backward, but he hauls it against me. The smell of dried salt and sweat and blood thick between us. I look for a sharpened rock, but it is next to the basket I was weaving, too far away, and I feel a panicked kick in my chest. I open my mouth to speak, and his eyes fasten on me, gaining focus. "What are you doing?" he hisses, eyes hard as he looks around him. "Where am I?" I lift up the leaves, showing him, but it's only as he examines his other wrist packed tight with the crushed plant that he lets me go. I stumble backward, unable to stop myself from falling in the sand. Feeling foolish and embarrassed, we stare at each other, my eyes narrowed and hurt and his shaded with regret. The boy rubs both hands over his head, turning to the sea. "I'm sorry," he says to the waves. His voice is scratchy, catching in the wreck of his throat, the sound that comes from someone who has screamed themselves raw. I sit in the sand for a moment, more as my heart calms, his apology sinking in. Getting to my feet again, I pick up the leaves. It will help with the pain and the healing. The boy looks up at me, and we let silence stretch between us as we weigh each other up. And then he nods. I move toward him slowly, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling in the soles of my feet. He He offers his wrist, letting me pack the last of the plant under his restraints. "Let me see your back," I demand, using his apology as an opportunity to get him to let me treat his wounds. The boy rotates stiffly, and I stifle another gasp when I examine his shoulder blades and the stretch of flesh down his spine. There are 3 deep gouges. I frown, my anger blazing again before applying the rest of the crushed plant to the wounds. He doesn't move or make a sound, but I can see the other side of his clenched jaw. When I'm finished, he doesn't say thank you, and I can't help but grit my teeth. He's in pain, I tell myself. Be patient. I push the basket of water and wrapped fish toward the boy. He slides his gaze from the sea, snatching a look at me. "It's for you," I say simply, nudging the food and holding the water out to him. He accepts the basket, not taking his eyes from me as he drinks greedily, water spilling down his chin. When he unwraps the fish, he fumbles, nearly dropping it in the sand. Catching it in his large hands, he eats carefully and slowly, chewing each mouthful properly. When he is done, leaving only the fish head, he picks the flesh from his teeth, wiping at his mouth. "It was you who took me from the water, wasn't it?" A gleam of curiosity illuminates his eyes as he shifts positions. "Where's your tail?" I say nothing as he casts his gaze over the shine of my wrapper, down to my knees, into skin and legs. I consider not answering, but I know he saw me change earlier. Yes. As the word leaves my mouth, I think again about what Yamoja would say about showing myself to a human. Another rush of guilt floods through me. He opens his mouth to ask more questions and then stops. We watch each other, this boy and I, both fresh from the sea. His shoulders are still hunched, a frown rippling over his face, but he relaxes enough to take another sip of water. When he pokes at the leaves wrapped around his wrist, he looks up at me, his face alight with surprise. It feels better already. "Don't touch it," I say, turning away from him. It still hasn't said thank you. He still hasn't said thank you. Did he believe I was that monstrous? And then I think about how he saw me, a shadow in the sea among the sharks, dragging him through the waves. I turn back to him. "There's more," I say, holding up another sardinella. The quicker he heals, the sooner I can get him off the island. The boy nods, his eyes moving over the vacant beach. I lift another fish from beside me, tearing it apart with my fingers, pulling its innards free. The food looks good, but I won't keep any for myself. He needs it more than me. But if he can heal faster, perhaps I can take him to the mainland in the evening. "We should clean your wounds properly." The boy shakes his head and waits as I gut the fish with the sharp rock. I lean forward and hand it to him, but when he edges away, I wrap it in another leaf and place it in the sand. It is only after I retreat that the boy grabs the sardinella, cramming the white shreds of flesh into his mouth. "You don't want me to be near you," I say, twisting my damp hair around my fingers, stretching out ringlets, keeping the rock close by. "I could say the same about you," he says, and then stops picking at the bones of the fish. The food seems to have given him the courage to speak, as well as much needed strength. It's not that, though. But it is that, I think, turning to scan the horizon, trying to ignore the way he makes me feel. As if I'm something to be feared. Is he not, too? With his fists and the anger I can still sense in him, I rub at my wrist, small bruises circling it. "Where are we?" This time the boy stays conscious enough for my answer. "How far are from the Oyo Kingdom?" "This is a small island. We're just over a day from the mainland." "Why were you here, in the sea?" The boy coughs, voice still rough. I turn back to look at him, seeing his face smoother now, the anxiety still there, but not as fresh. He grimaces and shifts in the sand. His lips tilt up on the side with discomfort. "I was there to help. I lay my hair on one shoulder and comb through the tangled ends with my fingers. Help! I pause, twist the black curls in my hands, thinking of what to say. But he has already seen so much, so I don't see much harm in saying some truths. To bless the journey of those who pass in the sea. To collect the dead? A mango orange wrapper, bruised brown skin and hair loosened from braids. If you wish to describe it that way. Yamoja, he whispers through cracked lips, eyes on me. What did you say? I ask, my voice rising in surprise. What do you know of Yamoja? I know she is the mother of all arises. He is sitting up now, fingers wet from the fish, sprinkled with sand. I am struck by the stark planes on his face, the edges of his cheekbones, and the curiosity in his gaze. I know that she is protective and fierce. The boy is studying me again, eyes brighter now, but with calculating gleam. I've heard stories of mami wata. Did Yamoja make you into this? He straightens his back, but still keeps his distance. Who were you before? His words feed my annoyance, and as my fingers catch on the knot in my hair, I tut angrily. Why must he ask so many questions? I focus on undoing the tangle and do not meet his eyes. I don't tell him that I can't remember, that part of assuming this form is dissolving of who and what I was before, that more of my memories come back when I have legs instead of a tail, and that this is why, unlike other mami wata, I change even when I don't need to, because I want to remember who I was. That doesn't matter, I answer, deciding to keep it simple. What does is helping souls return to Olodumare. Then I'm thankful that you found me, says the boy in the last light of the day, leaning forward. I don't need returning just yet, but I do need something else. He lifts his hands and I shift away. Thinking of the hard grip before, seeing my movement, the boy stops, catching sight of the sliver of my frown, and then composes himself, drawing backwards. What I mean is, will you help me? I have already. I stop for a moment, thinking of the shock of his eyes opening, of finding him alive in the water and dragging him here to Yamoja's island. The boy inches closer once again, the manacles on his wrists rattling. While he still takes care to keep his distance, his eyes are lit with a yearning that can only mean he wants something more. Simidele, please, I need to get home. It's the first time he used my name, the first time a human has said it in months. The sound of it cracks open, an ache inside of me. I find myself wanting to hear him say it again. Take me to Yamoja. His voice snakes around me like a smoke. A thread of fear and longing twisted through it. My eyes widen in shock, my spine straightening. Why? I'm trying to keep him away from Yamoja, not bring him to her. She's a powerful Ariza. Yes, I answer uneasily, sliding a glance at the calm bay, half expecting the waters to part, ebony skin and a gold crown splitting the surface. Then she will surely take pity on me and help me get home, he says, voice low and eyes glittering in the bright sun. I'm begging you, please. The boy blinks, and a solitary tear courses down the slope of his cheek before he wipes it away roughly. I need to get back to my family. If I don't, you may as well have left me in the sea to die. Chapter 5. I've already saved him, and now he asks more of me. I stand up, stumbling, my chest tight at the thought of helping this boy summon Yamoja. I dig my toes into the sand. You don't know how Yamoja will react, I tell myself. Even though uncertainty weaves through me, perhaps she will be proud of you for saving a life. And then I remember the way the Ariza embraced me when we spoke of my task. The strict crush of her arms, and the lack of breath as she squeezed me tighter. It would be better to take my chances in hiding him on the island until he's ready to leave. The boy shifts nearer to me, the closest he's ever been. Need trace the lines of his upraised eyebrows. What's your name, I ask, looking down at him. The echoes of his desperate words lodged themselves further under my skin, fighting with my panic. The boy frowns. Mouth is in an unsettled line. Eta cola. Cola. Cola, I say, rolling his name in my mouth as I look out to the darkening sea. I ache for its cold waves and their simple depths rather than the thought of metallic eyes and the stern curve of the Ariza's mouth. I can't help you summon Yamoja, but when you've healed a bit more, I can take you to the mainland. No, Kola raises his wrists, wincing as the skin draws tight over his back. That isn't good enough. It'll take too much time. I need to be there soon. He hisses, mouth quivering, and then shakes his head, curling his fingers into fists. He slams them down on the ground. I manage not to flinch, but I make sure that I am not within Kola's reach. With his chest heaving and knuckles buried in the sand, I study the boy who seemed so helpless only a short while ago. His pain wraps around him in the set of his shoulders and the angle of his head. What happened to you? I ask quietly. Why do you need to get home so quickly? Kola is silent for a moment, and then he exhales, rubbing a large palm over his hair, sliding it over his face. I was taken and traded, put on Oyinbo's ship a few weeks ago. That's the ship I was thrown from when you found me. His words loosen something inside me. A memory of shouts and ropes and pale faces. I reach for it, but it snakes out of my grasp, and all I'm left with is a stomach twisted up in knots. I turn back to Kola and see the same shade of suffering on his face as he yanks his wrists apart, straining against the chains. I want to tell him to stop, and that he'll make the wounds worse, but I don't speak. If I don't get home soon, worse could happen. His words are tightly spun with an ache that mirrors the one buried inside me. Kola closes his mouth on the last words, jaw clenched, but I see his lips trembling, can feel the anxiousness that rolls from him in almost perceptible waves. There's more, I think, but I don't push him to tell me. It wouldn't change the way he feels, the risk he is willing to take. I try to think of what Yamoja will say, what she will do if I bring him to her. Will she punish me? Or him? I imagine trying to keep him hidden from Yamoja finding out anyway. Surely she will know if anyone apart from Mami Wata is on her sacred land. It feels as though, either way, the Ariza will find out that Kola is there and what I have done. I touch the sapphire at my throat, thinking of the woman who sank beneath the waves in the glimpses of her life. I was able to bless her soul, but that was all. With Kola, I have a chance to do more. It is a risk for both of us. I take a breath and really sit, letting the words stream past my lips before I can think about it anymore. But I'll help you summon Yamoja. Kola raises his gaze, the last of the sun's rays illuminating the spark of joy in his eyes. Now? I shake my head, glancing at the sea. We need to wait for tomorrow. At least I'll have more time to think of what I'll say to Yamoja. Kola gets up in awkward jerks, eyes hooded. Why? He asks, tone sullen, spiked with anger. I purse my lips, sucking my teeth at his question. Not only has he still not been very thankful, but he also doesn't seem to have any patience. I wonder how he will speak to Yamoja and feel another jolt of doubt at what I've promised. We must wait for the 7th day, or she won't come. Kola plucks at a pebble from the beach and throws it, even though the movement will cause him pain. I can't afford to wait, he says. You have been away from your home for a few weeks, I state firmly, annoyance increasing in the volume of my words. One night won't make a difference. It will. Kola's chest heaves as he tries to calm himself. It will. He tries again, quieter this time. I turn away, kicking at the sand. Kola's tone is similar to that of a spoiled child, and his demands are wearing down what little patience I have left. When I walk stiffly over, the boy allows me to get close enough to see the grooves of his frown. Tomorrow is the Arisa's day, the only one she can be summoned on, I say, vexation sharpening my words. One night, I don't control it, it's that or nothing. Kola doesn't reply, but I notice the flare of his nostrils, the chunk of his fists. I step away from his anger, nursing my own, leaving an expanse of sand and cool air between us. The boy finally nods before sulking over to the rocks that rise, splintered and charcoal gray. He climbs the dark mass, perching above the beach as the waves crash against the shore. Kolo's frustration is palpable, but I still flinch when he brings his bound fist down on the rock again and again, smashing the black iron of the manacles against the sharpness of the stone. It must hurt him, but he doesn't stop, letting his anger spur him on, swinging his hands down one last time before he holds the broken irons up. Kola's outline and the manacles are silhouetted against the moon behind him, and then he casts them into the sea with strangled shout of rage. Afterward, his shoulders slump, slack from the exertion. I don't hold his anger against him. The manacles are a reminder of what he has gone through, and I'm glad to see them cast into the sea. The blackest part of the night sky presses against us when the boy returns to the beach. He sprawls in the sand next to me, chest still heaving, staring in the dark sea. So, tomorrow, he asks, and I take his words, his softened tone, as an act of appeasement. Yes. Kola does not speak for a moment, and we listen to the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks. I didn't think I would ever meet any mami wata. He swivels to look at me, face full of shadows. I don't say anything for a moment, tugging a curl. Get some rest, it'll help you heal. Kola watches me for a moment before he moves away, doubling the space between us, making a pillow from the crook of his arm and a bed in the sand. It is not long before the hunch of his shoulders relaxes. I watch him breathe and remember the hitch of his chest when I press my palm against it, the warmth of blood pumping beneath skin. Then I settle in the cooling sand, trying to stop my eyes from closing until I can't anymore. The ship creaks around me, waves rocking a violent and unnatural cradle. It is dark, and the stench matches the grief and terror thick in the fetid air. A burning hot fear has worked its way inside every part of me. I can't tell where it begins and I end. I open my mouth to scream, lips pulled back, hands in claws, and Simideli, wake up. I force my eyes open to the black sky sprinkled with stars. Kola is leaning over me, his hand shaking my arm. I sit up, hands checking my legs, curling my knees up so that I can wrap my arms around them. I'm fine. You were screaming, Kola says as I shrug him off. The memories that come back to me are not always the type I want. Some I will gladly let the sea take. We sit in the velvet darkness, listening to the waves crash against the shore. I remain silent, letting the night breeze wash over me, breathing deeply, clasping my hands around my knees so that I can't feel my hands shake. Kola does not touch me again, but I can still feel the press of his fingers on my skin. What is it? He is close enough that I can hear the catch in his voice. You were on a ship, I say, raking my fingers through the... Chapter 6. Kola dozes as the sun rises in shades of peach and carmine, transforming the sea from a deep violet to a steel blue. I didn't fall back asleep. I couldn't. Instead, I used the chill of the night to stay awake and focused on the crash of the waves until the shredded recollections faded. Next to me, Kola stirs. He sits up and then winces, looking down at his wrist. The poultice has dried and only clings to his skin in flakes. I'll get you some more, I say, pushing myself up before he can protest. Wait here. When I return, Kola watches me warily. I slow my steps, holding out the dark green leaves, almost like an offering, wondering if he'll let me apply them. Shall I? He watches me as I stop in front of him, kneeling down so that we are eye to eye. I lift my hands and then stop, waiting. Kola looks down at the wild lettuce in my grip and then back at me. I try a small smile and slowly reach for his wrists. When he doesn't pull away, I let out a breath. How did you know what to use? I pause. I can't remember, and it weighs me down with a crushing force that makes me feel suddenly exhausted. But none of this has anything to do with Kola, so I shrug and continue to squeeze the leaves until they are soft and malleable before I wrap them in strips around the open sores on his skin. Thank you. Kola's words are quiet, but firm and lodge inside me. I'm sorry again for grabbing you, for you nearly drowned. I cut him off and begin to apply the wild lettuce to his skin, but his apology shifts something inside me as I do my best to be gentle. When both wrists are done, I layer the leaves on the wounds on his back, which are struggling to knit together before I sit in the sand, still apart from him. Simidele, will we be able to summon Yamoja now? My eyes widen. I remind myself that there's no other option, but the thought of what the Ariza may say or do creates knots of apprehension that twist and tangle in my stomach. She may not grant you what you want, I warn, fingers in my hair, plaiting loose strands within my reach. My voice wavers slightly. I've never brought more than souls for her. Kola turns to look at me again, and I am struck by his eyes, brown but shot with other ochre. His face is open but watchful, and even though his height means that he towers over me, his sparse hair on his chin and smooth cheeks gives his age away. Will you be in trouble? The care in Kola's tone unsettles me, a reminder of his almost tenderness when he woke me from my nightmare, his fingertips against my skin. It doesn't matter, I want to say. It's too late now. Turning my back on the sea, I point to where the trees crowd against the beach, bushes with flowers dripping onto the shore. You'll need to pick 7 of those. Take only Emoja's colors, the white and blue ones. Nodding, Kola heads down in the direction I point. He takes his time choosing the flowers, and when he's satisfied with his selection, he turns back, cradling them in the cage of his hands. I like the way he holds them, delicately, so as not to crush any of the blooms. You must offer them to the sea, I say, fingers twisted as I think of how Yamoja will react when she sees this boy I have brought to her. Kola steps into the shallows, walking up to his knees before he lets the flowers fall. One by one, they float on the clear water, cresting each small wave before sinking. Use this prayer, I call, trying to keep my voice calm. You need to say it 7 times. He nods and repeats what I've said. Yamoja, I honor you with these blooms. Please bless me with your presence. Grace me with the love you have for all your children. Come forth. Kola plants his legs firmly on the seabed, water lapping at the bottom of his wrapper, and as his words ring out across the sea, 6 more times he repeats the incantation, his tone unwavering. There's courage, I think, in standing in the water summoning a goddess of the sea. When the cove remains calm, a semicircle of blue, Kola wades back to the beach to stand by my side. Did I speak the words in the right way? He asks. And then the waves draw back, a sudden recession that startles a flock of birds from the tops of the trees, sending them soaring into the air, their caws loud in the stillness. The shallows retreat into the bay, the wind pushing the twists of my hair across my face. I wait, coils obscuring my view of the beach until the breeze cuts off. leaving a silence that is thick with expectation. I force myself to stand straight and stop my legs from shaking, but my heart still pounds, roaring pulse in my ear. Kola stares ahead of him, the only hint of fear showing in the defensive set of his shoulders, as a wave that gains height and momentum swells at the mouth of the cove. The waters rush back in, and the boy flinches. We watch together as the wave smashes against the shore with a power that I feel in my bones. Stay calm, I whisper shakily as Kola takes small steps back, though I find myself wanting to do the same. A figure emerges from the sea. Umoja pauses, her hair a black cloak around her shoulders, coils glistening underneath her crown, sharp and gold and shining in the sun. She steps onto the beach, her wrapper forming a perfect white and indigo folds, each sinuous movement bringing her closer to us. Do as I do, I whisper as I bend my knees, lowering my gaze, and all but pressing my forehead into the hot sand. I try to swallow, but my mouth is dry. There is movement next to me as Kola folds his height into a bow. Don't speak unless Umoja demands it, or I ask you. Dark brown toes reach the white sand in front of me as the scents of violets and coconut almost overwhelm me. I lift my gaze, skimming past muscular legs, past the bright white of the wrapper, edged in indigo and shot through the delicate gold threads, up to the thick necklace of bulbous pearls. Simidele? Just the lowness of her tone makes me not want to raise my head to face her, but I do. Her veil sways, a mouth of sliceable lips pursed into a line. I lift my gaze higher to the flash of her eyes, which sparkle in the hard shade of silver. What is the meaning of this, daughter? Asks Umoja, swiveling her head back to Kola. Beside me the boy stands, wiping sand from his palms on the ragged wrapper tied around his waist. He looks at me, and I clear my throat, pressing my shaking fingers to my sides. At least he's not opening his mouth to make demands already. Mother Umoja, I begin, keeping my tone respectful. Edakola would like to request your help. The Ariza holds up a hand, stopping me. Gold rings set with unpolished diamonds and emeralds glitter from her fingers. She tips her head to one side. How did he come to be here, summoning me? I saved him, I licked my lips, tasting salt. I pulled him from the sea. Umoja snaps her head toward me, the pearls of the veil clicking loudly. You did what? I was about to gather his soul, but he hadn't yet passed. The Ariza swivels to face me fully. Did you fail to remember your task? Her words are quiet but needle sharp. Shaking my head, I form my next sentence carefully, trying to keep the rising confusion that mixes with anger out of my voice. I saved a life rather than a soul. Surely saving someone is a good thing. I didn't forget, but I couldn't let the sea and the sharks claim him. You speak of my purpose, but he was alive. To leave him would have meant his death. Umoja looks down at my legs and the shine of my wrapper. And so you've shown yourself to him and brought him here? The hiss of her voice makes me wince. I look back at Kola and think of his face when he saw the flick of my tail, the scales that melted into skin. At the time, I wasn't thinking. Flustered by the effort of dragging him to some kind of safety, shame and heat rise and spread across my chest and up my neck. But then I think of Kola slumped in the sand, the food he ate, and some of the guilt seeps away. The sudden roar that the Ariza releases causes me to stumble backwards in the sand, losing my balance so I fall hard. My heart slams against the wrapper tucked tightly against my chest as I cower before her. Umoja raises her hands to the heavens, fingernails like talons as she screams again. Kola clutches his ears as the cry grows louder, piercing the air. I hear the waves smash against the rocks of the cove, and when I dare to look up at her, Umoja stares down at me, a wall of water behind her. The blue mast shimmers, its weight held back by the Ariza. For a moment I think she will release it, battering the beach and us. I snatch a look at Kola, willing him to move closer to me. He would never survive. Mother Umoja, I say, raising a hand, palm up, please. When he's healed, I can take him to the mainland, and then no one else will need to know. The Ariza quivers, obsidian hair cascading over her shoulders, in a heaving mass as she regards me. Umoja wavers, the corded muscles in her arms tight as she holds her fists above her head. She glares at me, lips twisted into a snarl, but in her eyes there is a gleam of fear. Please, I stand and place my hand over my heart. I thought I was doing what is right. The Ariza regards me in the silence for seconds that spread longer than I thought possible, and then she lowers her hands behind her. The water drops, drawing back into the bay. I inhale deeply, checking that Kola is still close by. His shoulders are hunched, but his eyes are sharp and watchful. Umoja's fingers twitch and the sea grows placid once again. Her shoulders drop as she turns away from us. You don't. But the Ariza does not finish before staggers and then crumples to the ground. Umoja sits in the white sand, her wrapper spread around her like the petals of the flowers that we picked to summon her. Her face is angled toward her lap, curls a dark shroud around that shield her from my gaze. Simidele, she says softly, looking up at me through her hair. Her veil shines, iridescent strands of pearls that are tightly drawn across her nose and cheeks. A tear slides from underneath the milky orbs. What you have done will mean our deaths.